Hello, and welcome to the first of our Talking Head series. I'm here with Casey Rutland, who is an Associate Director at Arup, who are one of the largest consultancies in the world and need no introduction. So welcome, Casey.
Thank you very much.
You're an architect by profession and an Associate Director of Arup and responsible for the global implementation of BIM throughout the world. What do you think the impact of BIM will be upon the fit-out sector?
I think you're quite right in suggesting that the BIM is a global thing, first of all. I think my specific role is within Arup Associates, primarily to make sure the architectural and design multidisciplinary teams are at the forefront of that technology, which will then ultimately spread out to Arup globally. But I think BIM will not just affect the fit-out sector, it won't just affect the consultants or the suppliers or the contractors, it's affecting every single part of the construction industry. And I think that can help many parts of the industry, particularly the fit-out sector, in terms of scheduling items for furniture, laser scanning shells of buildings to ensure the fit-out materials are actually ordered properly and they'll fit first time when they arrive on site. May not necessarily happen that way, but we can hope. But it will move everyone beyond working just in a paper environment to a point where they're working on the latest information in an easy manner.
How can companies with absolutely no knowledge of BIM whatsoever get involved in this project?
First of all, BIM will always work best when you're instructed to do it, when you have a certain amount of deliverables and you have to work within a certain environment. And that's down to the education of the clients. I personally do a lot of that within our project work, so they ultimately end up with a better building. But I think once you get to the point where we're having tier 3 and 4 suppliers coming on board and they need to educate themselves, there's no real better place to start than the government task force. In some instances, people do have to spend money on software, but it doesn't apply to everybody. It doesn't apply to the entire supply chain or the guys who end up on site.
Do you think it will actually be everywhere inevitably?
Yeah, I think it will be everywhere. There's no reason for it not to be everywhere. Once people become familiar with the process of sharing their models, sharing their data, sharing their spreadsheets with one another, that's working within a BIM environment. Just because there may be a geometrical model sat behind that doesn't necessarily mean it's unusual.
How do you see it impacting, though, on that fit-out sector specifically, where programs are generally tight and it's design and build, but build and design to a greater extent?
They will have a model that is verified depending on what's been built on site. They may end up with point cloud laser scan data, so that can be then used as part of the design process. So you're not fudging things on site so much. It will hopefully end up in, as I say, more efficiency and a better quality product at the end of the day.
What do you think will happen to those companies that actually ignore this revolution and don't get involved in BIM at all? And I hesitate to say technology, because it's not just technology, is it? It's
not just technology. There is a large amount of process that you need to go through, and there's a culture shift within offices to get people to work in a certain manner. The government have a mandate and said if you can't work within this environment, then you will not be able to work on government projects. We'll see what happens with that deadline, but it's pushing people at the moment to educate themselves to make their companies better. In terms of BIM is a process of digitisation in effect of the industry, and where digitisation has come along, it has had massive impact in some industries, such as the press. Do you know of, or can you identify other disruptive technologies that are likely to have that massive change on the construction industry in the coming years? I think one thing I'd like to see more of is laser scan data. It's out there being used now, but it doesn't filter all the way back down through the entire supply chain. And it just comes down to familiarity. People will become more familiar with using point cloud data. We've also got geolocated model viewers. We can have models hosted on an iPad that knows where you are, where your iPad is and where it's pointing, so that it can give an overlay of what should be there. And that's available now through commonly available software, some of it free apps. You just need the model content and the site to go along with it. But it's there, ready to be able to be used. I mean, some people are suggesting that we're on the verge of a new industrial revolution with things like 3D printing as well coming on. Do you share that view? And does that mean that you are very optimistic about the future? Do you think it's a great time to be in construction, or do you think It's a massively exciting time to be in construction. I'm doing things now that I didn't ever dream of doing when I was studying architecture. It's allowing me to expand my interests and apply that to the work that I do on a daily basis. So, yeah, hugely exciting and positive in all directions. Well, on that note, thank you very much, Casey. Thank you very much.
you.